We are live. It's the Infowarrior with Jason Bermas. And on this Sunday edition of the show, we are going to be covering Barack Obama's visit to China. Yes, he's leaving, I believe, today to go visit China to discuss not only the fall of the dollar, but this Copenhagen climate treaty, which essentially brings in world government. And, of course, we're seeing the mainstream media spin this, oh, the two biggest emitters of carbon are getting together so they can save the world. Meanwhile, the dollar keeps declining and declining and declining. And China is the model for this world government. They want a 1 or 2 child policy. If you go over that, you are going to pay a carbon tax on your children, on your cars, on the garbage you produce. Perhaps there's no bigger alarm than what's happening in the Netherlands. And let's not forget, Queen Beatrix, who is a longtime Bilderberger, heads that up. And they're saying, oh, it's only going to be a 20% tax, and it's going to be good for the people. But anytime you look at this, and people are getting hip to it here in this country, the carbon tax will be put upon the general populace. You see, when you start charging corporations more, they just charge you more in return, and in essence, will make a larger profit. And it's kind of great to see at the gas pumps now, Uncle Sam pointing at you and saying, if this carbon bill passes, you're going to pay 75 cents to $1 more a gallon. That really beats the propaganda in the mainstream. I have people call into this show and say, a carbon tax is a good idea. They're going after the big companies. No, they're going after you and yours, your family, your living standard, your home. That is the real deal. They're going to put GPS systems in all the cars, start charging per kilometer. That starts in 2012, by the way. It's already passed. It's going to start in 2012. Then they're going to ratchet it up on their own basis into 2018. These are their own documents, folks. Right in front of me is the Copenhagen Treaty. It's so big we have to have it in 2 parts. And just strewn throughout this thing. World government, taxation, cap, and trade schemes. And it is an unelected government by the COP. In other words, you have nothing to do with it. Your leaders have nothing to do with it. It is a United Nations body that will decide who governs carbon emissions. Carbon, one of the life forces of the universe, folks. And they have sold the public that their carbon footprint is creating global climate change, and we just can't bear it. After all, Ted Turner says that in, 8 or 10 years, if we keep going this, we're all going to be living in a failed state like Somalia. We're going to be turning into cannibals. I cannot make this stuff up. He says we will turn into cannibals. Cannibals, folks, if we don't do something about this. And, of course, Ted Turner is a huge globalist, always talking about population sustainability. And he actually discusses this in the same Charlie Rose program. And Charlie Rose asks him, well, what's wrong with the population? And he says, hey, there's too many people doing too many things, and that's what causes global warming. Remember what they tried to sell us on in the 80s? It was hairsprays and chlorofluorocarbons, and we were eating up the ozone layer. And then they changed the language. Oh, it's not global warming anymore. It's climate change. It's much more broadly defined. It's a semantical argument to make them seem smarter and trying to save you, because they always pose as the hero, folks. So now it's not chlorofluorocarbons, it's climate change. And who can deny climate change? I mean, the climate has changed throughout the centuries. That's what we're always going to have the climate change. But in the 70s, what were they pushing? They were pushing a global cooling effect. And that changed in the late 80s into the early 90s and now has been revamped into only world government can save us from climate change. And that's what Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister of Australia, clearly states. Gave a speech about it in Lowell University and calls everybody that doesn't agree, they're deniers. They're climate change deniers. We're going to come back after this. It's the Infowarrior with Jason Bermas, prisonplanet.tv, Infowars.com.